All right, let's get started with 12.4. What we've been working with are rational expressions, and in 12.3 we looked at finding the least common denominator, which is going to help us do addition and subtraction of rational expressions. So on this first one here, letter A, it's nice because if we look at our denominators here, we notice that we have common denominators. And if thinking back to working with fractions, if we have a common denominator and we're subtracting, then we just subtract the numerators. So the part of this problem that we're going to work on up here is going to be um, this section of the problem, and we're just going to subtract the 4x minus 4. So to do this, when you're copying this out onto your sheet, what you might want to do is change this to addition. And remember, addition is the same as add the opposite. And so what we can do is then change that to a negative 4x and that to a positive 4. So we have to be a little careful with our signs in the numerator. And then what we're going to do is just put the numerators together. So collect the like terms. We have 8x minus 4x is 4x. And then we have negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. And then we have to remember, a lot of students forget to do this. You got to put that over your common denominator, okay? And that's the answer. What we would do is we'd simplify this from the rules we learned in previous modules, but you can't simplify it. There's nothing that will factor out, and so there's our subtracted rational expressions, okay? Now looking at letter B here, we see that we don't have common denominators, so we're going to have to use the skills from 12.3 to make common denominators, okay? So if we look at the numbers 3 and 7, I'm going to write down below here that the LCM for 3 and 7 is 21. So I'm just going to draw my fraction bar to get this problem set up, help get this problem set up. Then I need to have both of these monomials x and y represented in the LCD, or the least common denominator. All right, and so then I do this little technique that you might like to try. Is I kind of ask myself, and I'm gonna have to make this a little messy, but I ask myself, how did I get down to here from 3y to 21xy? And so what I did was I multiplied by 7x. Okay. So the 7 times the 3 would be the 21, and then the x times the y would be xy. Well, if I use 7x, I have to multiply this also by 7x. So I'm going to put a 7x next to it. That's the term I multiply by, and I'm gonna do this distributive property to get my new numerator. Okay, so I get 7x squared minus 14x. And then I do the same thing for this. I say, okay, how did I get down here? Well, I multiplied by 3y. Okay, so that means I have to take this numerator times 3y. And I get 3y squared. Okay, now I've left out my sign here, which was subtraction, so I'm going to put a subtraction sign. And I have my common denominator. So I'm going to write 21xy, that's going to be the denominator. And in the numerator, I have 7x squared minus 14x minus 3y squared. I just put those terms together. And that's my combined rational expressions through subtraction. All right. So, be a little careful, check if you could factor this and simplify, but nothing's going to factor out of this top group. You're not going to be able to make two binomials, and therefore, we're not going to be able to cancel out anything with the numerator or denominator there. Okay. All right, let's take a look at C here. So we got to make the common denominators, and if you're looking at this and you're thinking it has something to do with -1, that's a good idea here. A nice way to do this, and you can look at some other videos for some other techniques, but one way to do this is to take this first fraction and reverse the denominator, just writing it in different order. We have the negative x and the positive 8. I wrote 6. I better change that to an 8. Okay. All right. And then minus. Okay. So there we're kind of in the same order. Um, if we remember from the previous videos that we would subtract or factor out a negative here, I'm going to factor a negative out front, and I have x minus 8 when I pull that negative out. Okay. So I'm going to draw a little line through this denominator because I've rewritten it. Okay. So if we look really close here on a common denominator, you know, we have this x minus 8, and then we just have this negative here. Well, what we can do with this negative is we can take this negative and we can just move it to the numerator of the fraction. And that comes out of a little review that just using one example, that you should know that negative 2/7 equals 2 over negative 7, which equals negative. So you can put that negative sign anywhere you want in the fraction as long as there's just one negative sign like that. And so what I did is I took this negative and moved it to the top. Okay, so if I move that negative to the top, I'll draw a little line through it so it knows I moved it. Well, look, we have common denominators. We have this x minus 8 and x minus 8. So we're just going to put our numerators together here. Okay, and put that over the common denominator. So we'll end up with, and I'll just write it right here, equals negative 15 over x minus 8. Okay. All right, that's the first three. We'll look at the last three in another video. Thanks.